Now, why am I doing this video today? Well, it's not the planned one, but due to sheer quantity of contacts, sheer volume of messages I received, comments on my YouTube channel, Patreon messages, tweets, Facebook messages, WhatsApp messages, and yes, the people who have my WhatsApp who message me about this, you know who you are. I decided that I would do this. I would do Trump's Battleship. And for those who don't know me, who don't know my channel, I am Alex Clarke. I'm a naval historian. I've left my PhD up, my doctor up on the channel site because I started it during COVID as a place for my students to find, and I've kept it up there because there are a lot of Alex Clarks on YouTube, and the only thing that differentiates me at all to make me easier to find is the doctor. So I've left it there. Okay. But my PhD is actually war studies from King's College London. So what I do is I use a lot of history to look at current warfare, to try and evaluate it and try and work out where the future might be going. So basically it's a lot of looking at the past to try and spot the trends within the present to evaluate the future, and that's what war studies is a lot of. So therefore, looking at the new Battleship announcements makes sense. And I'm going to do this by literally going through the articles which have come out. Okay? I am not going to pretend I have any specialist background knowledge on this. I have heard papers and things that have been studied on, read papers, etc., which have been coming about this, but I haven't seen anything directly of any nature like that on this point at this current time. So I'm just going to go through the announcements, and I'm going to look at exactly what's written. So this is the America's Navy. This is the official website of the United States government, and this is the official press release on the battleships. And it started on 22nd of December, which was yesterday. And Trump and John C. Phelan and Pete Hegseth, that's the Navy Secretary and the Secretary of War, have announced their intent to construct a new class of American-designed battleships. The most lethal surface combatant ever constructed. Now, here's the interesting thing. They've also called them BBGs, which means Battleship Guided Missile, if we use NATO standards and NATO phraseology. And here is the really interesting thing going on this. They're talking about the most lethal surface combatant ever. So they seem to have moved the battleship standard back from the idea of the dreadnought, which was the most, best balance of armor and firepower and speed, to almost the Aegis sail, first-rate, second-rate ships of the line idea of the most firepower, the most lethal, the thing that can annihilate you. There is a classic example of this, and if we look at the Aegis sail at Battle of Nile, there is a frigate, a French frigate, which tries to resist the British line going round the French, going behind them. And it does a stalwart thing. It fires at the ships of the line. One of the ships of the line opens up with a single broadside and wipes it out in one swoop. And that is what a battleship was historically. So I think that's the first thing I'm taking from this, is that they are looking at an older style of battleship. Not the battleship we're all imagining with HMS Dreadnought, i.e. those big, solid, armoured Dreadnought-style battleships. But they're looking at battleship as the most lethal surface combatant, which is not an aircraft carrier or a submarine. Okay. It's a way to make up and give yourself a lot of capability to deal with opponents. If you can't build mass, you build quality. As long as you get the quality in enough mass, it can work. It's a policy. The future USS Defiant. Okay, no one told me there were a load of Trek fans in the Trump government. They didn't tell me there were a load of Trek fans. Deep Space Nine fans must be ruling the world now. Will be the first Trump-class battleship, and will be an unambiguous statement of American commitment to maritime superiority with capability to distribute more firepower across the fleet than any other class of ship for any navy in history. I would say aircraft carrier, but go on. For non-aircraft carrier ship, yes, and I realise adding in the whole aircraft carrier thing might well get a lot of problems. Also, not sure why it keeps cutting off that edge. It's a really interesting website. The President has been clear we must back our American maritime industrial might, and he has told me many times as the Secretary of the Navy, it is my job to equip our sailors to win the fight at sea of the finest ships in our history. Stated John C. Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy. Now, when a conflict arises, you're going to ask two questions. Where is the carrier? Where is the battleship? Hopefully they're in task group together. That's what I'm going to hope. That was usually quite effective. Okay, let's just carry down here and see what it comes up. New battleships will stand as centerpiece of the Navy's Golden Fleet initiative, and will be the first of its kind, providing dominant firepower and a decisive advantage over adversaries. Da-de-da-de-da. I'm sorry. At a certain point, this is a press release. This is not naval history. This is not giving you any information. This is just press release and the blunt you get in politics. So do expect me to say da-de-da-da occasionally, because there's just... Engineered to outmatch foreign adversaries, all these things, and... Okay, here. Engineered to outmatch foreign adversary, new battleship class will be the centerpiece of naval power at triple the size of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. It will provide superior firepower, larger missile magazines, and capability to launch conventional prompt strike hypersonic missiles and surface-launched cruise missiles nuclear. Well, that's a status symbol. That's certainly going for something. They'll be capable of operating in a traditional integrated air and missile defense role with a carrier strike group, or commanding its own surface action group. So basically they're building a cruiser. They're rebuilding the strike cruiser. Oh, I really wish I could currently find the old paper things from the strike cruiser program, because this is reading so like the strike cruiser, right? The battleship will required using a Navy-led industrial collaborative design team approach to accelerate design and construction, supported by over 1,000 suppliers in nearly every state in America. Navy will continue to build and employ DG-51 as fleet workhorse. Oh, good lord. No. No, they're still building they're still going to keep working the poor Burkes to death. Please, let the Burke design be. Let the Burke design be. I'm just saying, please let it be. Okay. New class of battleship. This is the US Department of War. Let's see if there's any graphics or things here. That's head scuff. The one thing I have been interested of his, which I have seen, is he's been pushing a lot of putting gym equipment in airports, which, as you know, like you have in parks. I know this is not on the battleship thing, but I quite like it as an idea. I find the idea of exercising before I get cooped up on a plane quite nice. I know not everyone would, but I've always wished there were, as well as lounges, there were gyms in airports you could log into for an hour or two. I've never yet found that in an airport. If you have any ideas in any airports which actually do have a gym you can sign into for an hour or so, or a swimming pool, even better, I'd be really happy to know, and I'd be really happy. I'd try and... Well, if I was flying in that direction, I'd use it. Okay. Construction of 2 brand new, very large ever-built battleships. Okay, 2? No. 2 constellations, not good. 3 Zumwalts, not good. It's America. You've got 2 massive oceans, global commitments, interests all around the world. You need more than 2. I would be at least expecting you to be ordering 4. And if you're going to be getting any kind of cost reduction from building these ships in terms of from the amount that's going to have to be invested to build them, to design and develop them, versus construction of them, for it to be in any way worthwhile, you're going to need to be building probably about 8 to 12. So 2? No. A Golden Fleet. Well, the Great White Fleet was a good thing, so hopefully the Great Golden Fleet will be a good thing. We'll see what happens. Targeted for the early 2030s. It's 2025. So you're basically claiming you're going to be putting on a battleship, on a ship which is being built for the next 3 presidencies. Oh god. Oy vey. Right. Largest, deadliest. Okay, let's find some stats. The Iowa class was designed to go on and attack with the biggest guns. No, the Americans actually could build bigger. They just felt the 16-inch 50 was actually more effective than an 18-inch because of the rate of fire and because of the other options the 16-inch came in. Probably, that was the fact that they were the Iowas were designed as task group ships, whereas the Standards battleships and previous ones and most of the battleships in that area have been designed as battle line ships. The Iowas were designed as task group ships, so they would operate as part of a fast-moving task group, because that's the reality of when you're fighting war over a larger scale. It was really realised that in many ways the Battle of Jutland, as massive as it is, was kind of a one-off, because it's kind of the end of the line of battle. Because after that point, when you're fighting over a global stage with all the ships you need, you're not going to be able to mass your whole fleet together like that. Basically, it only happens because Germany and Britain have got massive fleets and are opposite each other. After that point, everyone's sort of sitting there wargaming and exercising after World War One and going, no, line of battle is not how it's going to be. It's going to be task group. And the British are going, yeah, we told our politicians that. But them and Beatty wanted to build battleships, so we've got Nelson and Rodney, which are great, but by golly are they slow, because they were built to be the bulwarks of the battle line. So yeah, I will accept that to an extent on the Iowas, but actually the Iowas were far more well thought through now. They didn't get the biggest guns because that was part of the balance. They had 9 guns because they are fast battleships. And to get the combination of armour and speed you needed to have that. And fast battleships are not battle cruisers. Please get this right. Fast battleships are actually built to do fight with battleships. So they do have the subdivision, they do have the armouring and the armour coverage that allows them to hold up in a fight with a battleship and actually go round it, whereas a battle cruiser wouldn't have that. And one of the problems you get into with discussions of battleships versus battle cruisers, and excuse me, I'm just going to disappear this for a second while I explain this one, is it's a spectrum, okay? It's the Dreadnought spectrum is what I sometimes call it for, which has the Dreadnought battleship on one end, which is basically built around armour and firepower, with nothing really for speed. But it goes fast enough. And then you've got the battle cruiser 2-word, like the Invincible class, which are basically armoured to fight a deal with a cruiser and basically are going around smashing everything up, small and trade protection roll. And as you go along here, you get more increased armour and subdivision. This is basically cruiser subdivision down this, at this end, the battle cruiser end, and this has very, very dense honeycomb subdivision, pretty much, at this end for the Dreadnought. And what complicates this whole spectrum is as time goes on and engines get more powerful, you can make ships heavier, you can make ships more dense, whilst getting even higher speed. And so the spectrum starts off here at this sort of engine horsepower, but then it starts to move, well, towards, in this sort of direction as time goes on, in terms of density of what you can build. That's why the G3s are a good example. I usually use the G3, M3 approach to explain to people. Because people look at the G3s and they go, they're fast battleships. I go, no, they're not they're battle cruisers. Because you compare their density to the M3, which were the battleships they were building, and you start to realise that the density by that point has got massive. And the trouble is you then have the treaty system and all these things which really muck it up. But basically it's a spectrum, and it's where they align on the spectrum. And the spectrum basically links into roughly 4 parts, with your Dreadnought battleships here, fast battleships, battle cruiser 1-word, and battle cruiser 2-word down the end, and it sort of breaks up. But they're points on the spectrum, and things can flutter around the edges a bit. But it sounds to me like what the Americans are talking about, what's being talked about, is a fast. Well, it's a cruiser, but it's going to fulfill the battleship role. So it's going to be a battleship. It's being called a battleship because it's the most lethal they can build. But basically, it's filling the strike cruiser role for the US Navy so far. I'll be interested to see when I get to actual stats of the ship. Electronic rail guns, high-powered laser batteries. Cool. All those things are interesting. We're going to make battle groups great again. Then we also need to talk about the carrier group. We really do need to talk about the carrier group. The new Trump-class battleship replaced Navy's previous plans to develop a new class of destroyer. Oh, no. No. Oh, good lord. And that means the Burkes are going to have to keep going on. And the trouble is, the Burkes are great. But you have to remember, it was 1970s concept, 1980s design, 1990s build originally, and naval architecture. And yes, they've done a lot of work to try and modernise them. But it's kind of like when you're dealing with car designs. At a certain point, car companies go, we can't fit the stuff into the old architecture anymore. We need to actually do a new design. And it's the same with ships. And the Burkes are a great example of this because they are just so good. Everyone thinks you can keep on shoving stuff in them. But you can't. You need to give them... You need something. Something. Anything else here? Nope. Alright. Look at some actual stats. Oh, and there's a photo here. Thank you, USNI. Thank you, USNI. No, I'm not supporting USNI. Giving Tuesday campaign, whatever that is. Not today. I've done enough for the USNI over the years. Trump unveils new battleship class. That looks sexy. It's got a pair of 5-inch on the front. Lasers, CRAM, I'm guessing. I'm going to go for 3 to 4 sets of VLS. I'm presuming the one between the VLS between the guns, the gun positions, is the hypersonics from their shaping on the picture. We'll see. We'll see. Every new picture I come across has it slightly different. So, centerpiece of Trump administration's largest surface combatant in America will be built since World War II. Cool. Navy will start purchasing 2 ships, eventually purchase 10 with a goal of 20 to 25. Oh, hello. That sounds better. Okay, that I'm happy with. Okay, that I'm happier with. I'd rather they were ordering more than 2 in the first batch. I really would, because I never trust governments to order more than they were already ordered. Whatever actually has been ordered and paid for is the amount of maximum I trust them to be. Is about as far as I trust them. If it's just being talked about, it's just theoretical stuff. But we'll see. And it looks like we've got some specs here. Hello. Let's zoom in on that for you all to see. Okay, length between 840 and 880 feet. Beam 105 to 115 feet. That's an interesting length to beam ratio. That is an interesting length to beam ratio. I think that's going to be, if I remember correctly, the overall length of an Iowa is 888, 887. It's just under 890 feet. So they seem to be a bit shorter than an Iowa, but fatter. Because I remember correctly, the Iowa is, well, a little bit above the lower point of that. So, yeah, interesting. 24 to 30 foot draft, okay. Greater than 35,000 tons. Yeah, that makes sense. But this is not an armoured ship at this point. 30 plus knots, okay. 650 to 850 crew. I'm guessing that's depending on what the command complements aboard. 20 to 25 ships. I'll believe that when I see it. I'm sorry, that might sound cynical, but I will. I'll believe that when I see it. And nice way, I come from Britain, the land where we write a study which says we need 12 destroyers. We order 9. We take delivery of 6. Yeah, I don't trust it until it's in the water in service, okay? That's when I finally trust what's actually been said. Surface launch cruise missile nuclear, 12 cells CPS, so that's 12 for the hypersonics, 128 cells Mark 41 VLS. Okay, alright, so they're usually in blocks of 8. That's not really a lot. For a ship this size, I'd be expecting more Mark 41 VLS. I would be expecting more. And I'd say, okay, maybe they only have 2 slots, but again, they're only putting 64 in each. Look at the size of that thing. Surely it could take 96 in each. Surely you could have designed. It's not going to be that much. With the amount of money you're spending into it, surely 96 in each at least, or maybe even more. Because they're multiples of 8. But I'd have thought there'd be more space than that. Especially on the weight we're talking about. We're talking a huge amount of weight. It looks menacing, but there's a huge amount of weight there for 128 cells. Secondary battery, one 32 megajoule railgun with, okay, HVP. What was originally planned for the Zumwalts? We'll see what happens. 2 5-inch guns, okay. 2 300 kilowatt or 2 600 kilowatt lasers. Defensive batteries, 2 ram launchers, 4 30mm guns, 4 Odeon lasers, and 2 counter UX systems. There's a lot of twins going on here, systems. I don't like it. I'm sorry again, but if you're building... okay, let me explain this. So, if I build something with 2 systems, let's say there's one either side of the ship, then if one stops working or gets knocked out or damaged or just has a maintenance issue or is just down for maintenance, then I've got an entire portion of the ship which isn't covered by a system, and I have to turn the ship to cover it. And the speed of modern weapons, that might not be fast enough. So this is usually why we start talking about in 3s and 4s, because you can position 3 systems so that they have some coverage of each other's area. You can position 4 so that pretty much every area is still covered, even if 1 or 2 of the systems go down. So 3 gives you 1 spare, 4 gives you 2 spare. Now, okay, with the guns, I can understand, and that's fine. With the 5-inch guns, and yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. But with the lasers, with the ram launchers, and I'd say with the counter UX systems, I would want those to be upping to the numbers of 30mm and Odins, and I'm not sure if they're going to be positioned where they are, because where they seem to be talking in a way that's going to coverage, because it looks like to me that a lot of stuff is being, not sure if you can see my mouse, you can't see my mouse, is being positioned along the sides. Look, if this is going to be the centerpiece of your firepower and the centerpiece of your position, of your force, you want to have that more coverage. Because you think about how much money you're spending on the ship, and I'm going, well, an extra couple of ram launchers against the cost of the whole ship is not that great. An extra couple of lasers, possibly that will be more expensive, but again, perhaps you have 2 300 kilowatt and 2 600 kilowatt ones. Either way, I would like to see more overlapping coverage. They are bigger than the Zumwalts, yes they are. Whether other countries will be involved in the construction, I can think of a couple who will probably get involved in this. I wouldn't be surprised, looking at the architecture and work that's going on and some of the design stylings, if BAE's design team is not involved in this somewhere, which would mean, well, technically they have an American branch, so they'd probably claim it was entirely their American team. But I'm reckoning there are a few involved in that. I'm reckoning the AUKUS partners are somewhere in here as well. Oh, I'd love to see one in Australian and one in Royal Navy colours, but I doubt we're going to get that one. Our governments aren't going to spend that much money. Other than not having enough coverage of secondary weapons, and I would have hoped they'd have had more Mark 41, maybe even Mark 53 like the Zumwalts have, because the Mark 53 is just that bit bigger and bit better than the Mark 41. But there again, it's only been fitted in the Zumwalts, and there aren't as many systems taking advantage of it, so the Mark 41 is the off-the-shelf option. But yeah, it's interesting. Let's see this. Oh. So they got 28 cells there. '28 Mark 41 cells there. Conventional strike systems. I'm guessing that's missing the 1 off its number. I'm guessing that's missing the 1 off its... I don't think there's 28, because again, they count in sets of 8, so I was sort of going 28? I think it's missing the... I think it's missing the 1 off it. But again, it's an interesting graphic, but again... A lot of the weapons are along the side. Including up to 50,000 tons before setting on the 35,000 ton. Brian Clarke, Naval History Clarke, so the Navy is considering buying 12 to 13 vessels in the new ship class that can field large hypersonic missiles in large specialized missile tubes in addition to traditional Mark 41 VLSLs. 10 to 15 billion? If that's per ship, someone is doing a lot of markup. I'm hoping that's for the initial batch of 2 with all the research work, and then the follow-on ones cover on. But again, that's a lot of markup going on there. There's a lot of markup happening there. Because a lot of these systems are off-the-shelf stuff integrated with existing architecture, which they're already being built with. So I would not expect it to be that high, especially if, and they haven't said, is it nuclear powered? I haven't read yet if it's nuclear powered on here. I think, though, they're carrying nuclear weapons. They could be carrying nuclear cruise missiles, yes, but they haven't said if they're nuclear powered, and although they could be, but they haven't said it. And I won't be sure until I see it. Yeah, Long Beach. Long Beach was a good ship. Long Beach was a very good ship. A nice way, the strike cruiser program and the 20,000 ton guided missile cruiser. The US Navy has been asking for a larger ship for a while. It's just they haven't been able to get them. The strike cruiser was cancelled because of the end of the Cold War. Let's see what the next one is. Next one has. Oh, they've gone for this graphic, and they've got all sorts of weird things going on. Get away. Let's see. This is TWZ. Okay. We're going to need to zoom in on you again, aren't we? Right then, let's see. More talking about our classes. Okay. Centerpiece of the Golden Fleet is what they can... From President Theodore Roosevelt and the Great White Fleet to legendary Iowa class, a missile whose massive guns helped win World War II, America's battleships have always been unmistakable symbols of national power. Well, I do appreciate the linking back to Teddy Roosevelt, and I do appreciate the mentioning of the Great White Fleet, because that really was an important part in American history that seems to get written out a lot of. And the fact there hasn't been, to my knowledge, a decent movie about the Great White Fleet is something which I will hold personally accountable. Will hold Hollywood personally accountable for. I really feel they could have done a really good movie about that, because they get up to... Look at the history of the Great White Fleet and what they get up to. They're travelling around the world, all the stuff they do. Okay. Make battle groups... Alright, let's carry on. As we forge the future of the Navy's fleet, we need a larger surface command, and the Trump-class battleships meet that requirement. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Darrell Claude also said in a separate Navy press release. We will ensure... So are they the Trump class or the Defiant class? Because the first one's supposed to be the Defiant. Is this, we will ensure continuous improvement, intellectually honest assessments about the requirements to effectively deter and win in the 2030s and beyond, and disciplined execution resulting in a fleet unparalleled lethality, adaptability and strength. The trouble is, when you're doing conflict deterrence and conflict management, when you do it right, there is no war, and no one notices, and no one gives you sounds hoorays. They are all ready to jump on you when you do it wrong and things go wrong. When conflict management fails, when you fail with the deterrence, then people will jump all over you and tell you how bad and how terrible you are. Every time it works well, they just don't notice you've done it. Which is something which navies do a lot of. Navies are heavily involved in conflict management and deterrence. So let's go through this. We've got 3 times the size of the Early Burks. Okay. Based on the Fright 3s, which are the bigger ones. Intermediate range conventional prompt strike. Okay. All those weapons, nothing new there. Still nothing mentioned about their power supply, whether they're going to be nuclear powered or conventionally powered. Yes, they're carrying 2 5-inch naval guns. To be fair, that's also what the US are used to, having ships with 2 5-inch guns on them. That was standard par for the course for many years. The Tychos, I think, had 2 5-inch guns. Having bow forward, I will say this: having bow forward with the main gun forward is starting to remind me a little bit of Royal Sovereign era pre-dreadnought battleships, those sort of ones, because that's their sort of style. It looks sort of Lord Nelson-ish. The Americans were, of course, the ones who like to put guns on top of the other guns, so they'd have stacked turrets. Literally have a gun stacked on top of the other turret of a big gun. But, yeah. It's an interesting capability. It certainly is, to bringing this much firepower conventionally into the battle. I'm saying conventionally as it is technically conventional firepower, but again, we've got missiles coming from aft. So this is suggesting that the VLS systems are not in the center. They're at the front, back, and the hypersonics. But still, I'd also expect them to have more hangar space. I think they're going to need multiple helicopters to be able to carry them. So I would expect them to have multiple helicopter facilities. I know people are going to start talking about torpedoes. I can just imagine there are people going to be going, these ships are going to be sunk by submarines. But it's kind of like hypersonics and everything. The surface ship has been predicted going to be destroyed for ages. It's always being predicted it's going to be taken out. And the 2 things you do are, 1, you try not to get hit, so you have the survivability onion. First thing is don't get detected. Second is detect them before they detect you, and all those things. But again, that's the same with most weapons these days. Most weapons these days are powerful enough that if you get hit, it's going to be a significant event. Most weapons these days you get hit. The larger ship you are, the more chance you have of surviving. And I know people are going to talk about back-breaking torpedoes at this point, and heavyweight torpedoes, and they are dangerous. But again, look at their ranges. Look at the reality of their operation, and yes, probably going to go, we could be firing from an uncrewed asset and all these things, yes, but you're going to have your own uncrewed assets. The interesting thing I'm waiting for realistically with these ships, and I'm going to use the graphics from here, because this has so far been the coolest graphics we've seen. I don't think this is an accurate representation of a future task group. I keep saying this, but my suspicion is that I would call it a cruiser, but obviously for public relations reasons it's being called a battleship. Okay, fine. Alright, it's called a battleship. I would say it's a cruiser, but they want to call it a battleship. That's fine, but I don't mean, that's fine, that's up to them. But I would say what you're looking at in future is you're going to have each crewed ship is going to be the center of its own mini task group, and each task group, and this task group is made up of uncrewed assets, of loyal kayaks, whatever we're going to call the uncrewed vessels. I prefer sloops that are going to be around them, providing extra VLS, extra air defense, extra sensors, things around them. And so, to an extent, you're then going to have a task group. Let's say you're forming a surface action group of 3 or 4 Burks and one of these. Great. They're also bringing with them about a dozen sloops, let's say, spread across them. Maybe each Burke can monitor and support 2 sloops with its crew aboard, and also carry on the maintenance and check on them. And the battleship can deal with 4. And so you've got 12 sloops and 4 Burks and a battleship, and suddenly your task group is actually it's 5 crewed ships, but it's 17 vessels overall. And the sloops, the uncrewed assets, are fulfilling the role of the destroyer escorts, of the Sumners, of the Flower class or the River class frigates, of those sort of things from World War II. And I see these, in many ways, I see the crewed ships sort of jumping up a level. So frigates are now sort of the large destroyer leaders. The destroyers are now they're now pretty much light cruisers. This thing is heavy cruiser, battleship, whatever you want to call it. You call it what you will. I spent it going through my head. It's a cruiser, but we'll leave that to one side. But the thing is, that's what they're going to be doing, and then your task groups are going to be. That's how it's going to be. Which does make sense. But the thing is, no one's talking about that side. I don't see enough discussion. This should be being brought forward within the context of, this is the whole force we're buying. Yes, it's the Golden Fleet, and we'll go back to a second and look at the Golden Fleet proposal, but let's have a look at Wikipedia, see what the people at Wiki have found. Because must be hours old, this thing. Hours old. Any sources here which are interesting? That's the thing about Wikipedia. Okay? This is speaking as an academic. I can't use the written part of it because it's not got a name next to it, so I don't know how accurate it is. I've got no one I can hold accountable if it's wrong. But, as I teach my students, and I will teach everyone else, the sources in Wikipedia are usually a fairly good thing. If you have never touched the topic before, going down here and flicking through these sources can usually be a good place to go and find out information, and at least find out where you can go to find out more information about things. The reading lists are all pretty much there. There's a lot of links going on to the Golden Fleet Navy. Let's go back to this one though. Let's see that Golden Fleet Navy. Let's see what it looks like, shall we? Oh, cute. Cute pictures. Most lethal warship ever to be built. Battleships. Technical specifications. Fine. That's all there. Primary missions. Power projection. Offensive strike. Integrated air missile defense. Okay, so basically they've taken the Zumwalt and they've gone, we're going to make a fully Burke version of the Zumwalt. Alright. Alright. Anything else on this website? Anything? Golden Fleet. All you're telling me about is the battleship part of your fleet. Where is the rest? I don't want the press release. I want check back to stay informed. I will check back. I will check back regularly, but at least I know where they got the cool pictures from. So, let's do this. Okay, Benjamin has been sending me messages. One of the people who sends me messages on my on Twitter, and did the whole graphics. I don't want to go to the panel next to from here. I want you to just go away. Go away. Okay, I do that. Go back. Yes, you've gone away. Alright. Let's see. Is it a battleship in the Dreadnought mold? No, it's not. It's not a battleship in the Dreadnought mold. Don't think of it under that. Think of it in terms of the battleship mold as being the most lethal fighting asset you can put to sea, and then even I have to accept there is a logic behind calling it a battleship, although I'd say from its range and its mission profile, and I'll go back to that mission profile, power projection, that was always more a cruiser mission than a battleship mission. You deploy a cruiser around the world to show your power. You send a battleship when you want to demonstrate your power. That was always the line. But again, I will accept this. That's more me wanting to... That's partially, I will have to admit, that's me getting annoyed with the way, in fact, cruiser is treated as a dirty term by some people. I will never understand why cruiser is considered imperial and dirty, and battleship is considered perfectly fine, and destroyer is considered fine. It's when people tell me cruiser polls worse than destroyers, more nasty than destroyer, and I look at them and go, who is writing your polls, and who are the people you're polling? It's kind of like when people say that so many dentists agree, and yet every dentist I've ever spoken to has said they've never been polled once by any of those companies. I'll leave that to one side. It's going to be an interesting ship. It's got a lot of space for command and control. It's got a lot of space for crew. So it's got a lot of space for habitability. I am thinking it's placing a lot of its faith and protection in its sensors and firepower. That might be why it's still carrying on with what I would call wars of choice. We rule the world by rule the world by default era thinking when it comes to self-defense weaponry. I would like them to have more of those. I would like them to have a lot more of those, but we'll leave that to one side. I think if it gets built, it'll be very useful. And the reason I'm saying if it gets built is because one of the problems you get in politics is the more something's associated with one side, the more the other side usually likes to try and get rid of it. And that's even if it is a good idea. Even if it's working, even if it's sensible, each side does this, and both sides are just as bad as each other. In politics, left and right, any political party, even between right-wing parties and left-wing parties, whichever part, when a party gets in power, the first thing they want to do is dismantle whatever the legacy is of the previous parties there was. So so they can pretend they were always in power. I hope that doesn't happen. Because I think they can be useful. You see, yes, this ship, like any ship, is going to be able to be sunk. Please, no one start going away from this with the idea that you can build an unsinkable ship. They've been making that claim for long before the Titanic existed, and it's never been true once. There is no such thing as an unsinkable ship. But as part of a task group, as part of a task force, providing its own helicopters, perhaps its own loyal sloops, its own sensors assisting it, it's going to be a very useful asset to have. It is going to be a very useful asset to have. And I think also there is another advantage to it, because if you procure them in large enough numbers, you now have something you can send other than a Burke. Or rather, when you're doing deterrence, you can send in one of the new frigates. Let's call them the Legend class for the moment. Frigates. Well, they'll hopefully be able to be sent in, and then if no one's taken notice when you sent a Legend class to say hello, you then send an Arleigh Burke in to say hello and go, excuse me, we're really paying attention here. Please stop what you're doing. And then if they really don't pay attention, then a Defiant Class turns up and goes, okay, so look, we're here to be very nice and host a party, but you see all the guns and missiles we have. Don't keep doing what you're doing. Because the next one above us is we deploy a carrier battle group, and if we're going to the expense of deploying one of those, we ain't stopping with it just doing a flyby. That's called graduated deterrence and conflict management. It's also known as we need to explain really, really hard how much firepower we have by making you have dinner underneath the largest guns we have available. Because whilst everyone who's probably watching this channel knows the missiles are the more powerful thing, but human beings are visual creatures, and for some reason the missile sitting in its silo just waiting to be launched is not half as menacing to your soul as the 5-inch gun which looms over your head. No idea why, but it be the case. And as such, this thing is going to have a very interesting railgun. on it. Now, there is one thing I do really like about this, and I do think it's a lesson of the submods. There are enough existing standardized weapons in here, Mark 41, VLS, etc., all those things in here, that if the lasers and the railgun are not ready, you're not going to have the baby thrown out the bathwater. You're not going to have the whole class cancelled because they're not ready. I do like that. I do like that. Honestly, I'll be interested to see how it develops. I will be interested to see where this goes and how it goes. And thank you to everyone who sent me all the information about them. I will rejig some of the videos that were planned for the rest of the week and sort out things, but thank you. It's been interesting. It's interesting to wander through and read the articles. Now, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. Any questions, please leave them around below. I always end up with a question, and and today's question is going: do you think any other countries are going to follow in this route and build anything like this? I myself will think that whilst the Type 83s for the UK are currently unlisted as how big they're going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a slight size growth happening. Nowhere near to this size. I'm not talking again and going to get up to 35,000 tons. No, please not. I'm not saying that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are currently... One of the reasons why the UK is currently not releasing much information about our Future Destroyer program is the government's working out probably how small they can get away with without losing status. And in a world where there's 35,000 ton ships being launched by the Americans, I wouldn't be surprised if they are looking at having to go up to well into the teens for the Future Destroyer designs. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and yeah, looking forward to those comments. Take care. Oh, and if you like the video, please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And I've been trying to reach 20k by Christmas so that my mum and aunt are... My mum and aunt are non-identical twins, and they always have silly little Christmas... it's family bets things. And I think they bet on things to do with the family. And it's purely for bragging rights. It's a bit of fun. I think if I get to 20,000 subscribers, my aunt's supposed to pay for my mum to have a spa day. If I don't, then my mum has to bake my aunt some cakes. I think it's something like that. Something simple. But yeah, so if I do get to 20,000 subscribers, thank you very much. By Christmas, thank you very much. I doubt I will do. I think I'm a long way off, but thank you for your support, and thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and whatever else you're doing this time of year. I have no idea. At the moment I'm in the middle of setting up Christmas decorations and listening to Christmas music, so my brain is Christmassy-fied. Take care.